What's up, team? Coach Max here. Tonight I wanted to go over one of the foundational movements for you guys. I've talked about the foundational movements before, but I've never really broken each individual one down to the point like I'm going to tonight. So if you guys are interested in free content, check this video out. Definitely drop a like, comments, and share this video as you feel free to do so. Anybody that's deadlifting in the gym, if you're working on getting those deadlift numbers up, if you're just going to the gym for the first time and you're trying to learn more exercises, or if you simply want to get technically better at this lift, right? I'm going to try to help you do that tonight. So we're talking about the movement where you move at the hips and you dip the chest forward in front of the hips while your butt goes back. So as we like to think about this, we're going to go through just a basic drill to help get you started. We're gonna find a stick or a PVC pipe and just place that on our back. Now I want 3 points of contact on that back. I don't want your mid-back flaring off of it. So you gotta touch mid-back, have it touch your tailbone, and have it touch your head. So from there, I want you to pin or keep that pole in position, and I want you to soften your knees. Now, when I say soften your knees, I do not mean actually drop or lower yourself to the ground. Simply bend your knees a little bit, okay? From here, we're gonna start that hinge. So keeping those 3 points of contact, I want you to slowly dip that chest to the floor. You should be looking at a point somewhere in front of you on the floor with those 3 points of contact. From here, I want you to drive your hips through, squeeze your glutes, and stand up. So again, simply put, we're gonna do this drill to help engage those muscles that we wanna feel during that movement pattern. So remember, each movement that the body performs, it requires a lot of things to be coordinated and to be executed really properly. So if you wanna get better at moving, the first thing you have to do is understand the movement, right? It's simple. It's not easy to do though, that's the hard part. So when I work with clients or when I work with athletes that are trying to become more athletic, move better, get over an injury, the first thing I try to teach them is understand this is gonna be a journey and that your hinge isn't necessarily good or bad. There's a spectrum. I would maybe say it's an A, B, C, D, F type of scale. So something that's acceptable where you have, a quote unquote good movement. Let's not really think in terms of good or bad or just black and whites, but let's really open it up to that spectrum. So just because you're doing one thing right in your hinge doesn't mean you couldn't improve another, and vice versa. Doesn't mean you shouldn't beat yourself up. If you're struggling with a certain aspect of a movement, it's not the end of the world. Don't let it be, okay? You can work through that. So after you've mastered that drill and you can keep those 3 points of contact with the stick, we're gonna start loading this movement up with some weight. So right now, we're just moving through with our body weight, right? So we're just feeling this out. Now, the next way to improve a pattern of movement, right, is to start to make it stronger. And how do we do that? Lots of different ways. Now, I'm just picking the most simple way that most people are gonna choose, right? Basic weight training, going to do a deadlift. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. I'm gonna grab a kettlebell and I'm gonna show you what my deadlift looks like from the ground and from the top to the ground. So from here, let's break down an actual loaded hinge, so AKA deadlift. So simply put, I'm gonna grab a substantial amount of weight. We do not wanna be just grabbing 10 or 15 pounds here. We wanna load that sucker up. So the reason why is that our posterior chain or our back side is actually naturally very strong. This is one of the areas of the body that you want to load with some significant amount of weight, no baby weights here. So I want to see you pulling 10 pounds from the ground, okay? Think about your relative body weight. If you weigh a certain weight, you should be pulling about half of your body weight to start with for a basic deadlift, okay? So the weight's on the ground. I'm gonna pull the weight straight up in a line. So if you look from my hands to my shoulders here, I'm creating that line. So my line from my shoulder down through the elbow as I grab the weights, that's the direction the bell or the barbell is going to move. So it's moving vertical, right? So now we want to learn this path, this movement path. The weight is moving up and down. Do not let your angle tilt forward, okay? So a really common mistake I see is when you go to set up for the deadlift is the weight is too far forward. So now the angle with your hands is slightly out in front of you. We avoid this by pulling the kettlebell, barbell, or weights in to our midfoot or shin. This creates a vertical line of pull that we want to keep the whole time. Now, next step, I have my line, or I'm straddled over the position correctly, right? So I have the bell, I have my hands on the kettlebell, barbell, whatever. I see this straight line. Let's talk about the next one. Now, if we put the stick on our back, we should still have 3 points of contact. So if you see here, right, I'm going to try to let that balance. You can see I have all 3 points of contact on my back while maintaining that tall vertical angle here and making sure that I have the mobility to get there. So if I don't, it's going to look something like this, right? Or I'm going to be cheating somewhere. So the biggest thing that I have to do before I pull from the ground is I have to have requisite or prerequisite mobility to get there. So just be mindful and wary. I'm pulling from the ground, but you might not have the mobility to start there. You might need to start from a block or start from what we call a raised position, and that's fine. Feel it out, see how low you can go keeping your back flat, okay? Now my third and final point here that I'm going to share for the deadlift to help, remember, make it better is core tightness or breathing. Let's talk about your breathing. So if you think about a canister or a cylinder, okay? If you think about filling that up with air, I want you to do that into your belly. So you're gonna take your hands, put them just on the sides of your tummy, okay? Now, when you inhale, I want you to push out into your hands or simply widen the canister. So if you think about that cylinder opening up and creating more stiffness, that's exactly what we're doing. We're creating core strength here to support the lower back. So what this does is it creates internal pressure that we actually feel. So you should feel like if you're about to get punched in the stomach, you're braced for that, right? That's what you're thinking about. When I'm finally at the top of my movement, I can let my air out. So that's the biggest thing. You've got to have control and make sure you have that core braced on the way down as well. But you got to make sure your air is tight throughout the movement. So one of the biggest things I see people do is breathe out too early. So they're losing that intra-abdominal pressure halfway up. Or they might be setting up for their deadlift and be going like this to amp themselves up. And getting a couple of really big deep breaths in and out fast, and they might not even realize or understand where they're at when they're pulling. Now that is that key point where you're gonna probably blow out your lower back, pull something, and not even realize how you did it. So the first thing that you have to do to create intra-abdominal pressure is you have to learn how to belly breathe. You have to learn how to fill up that canister. It's a skill in itself. That's not even doing a deadlift. But when you take the deadlift, you have to be able to do that skill first. So the deadlift or hinge has a lot of prerequisites or things that you have to already learn or know how to do before you start really getting good at a deadlift or hinge. So that's the biggest thing. Is my lesson for you guys tonight is understand any movement, while we can make it simple, movement overall is complex. And I will tell you right now, the leading scientists, the best biomechanics, they are still figuring things out. So the biggest thing I want you to know with the hinge is you got to learn and practice this thing weekly. bi-weekly. Shit, you should practice it every day if you're a power lifter or if you're deadlifting all the time. This is something that, again, it's a skill, and it's something that's going to require patience and time to get better at. So practice your technique, practice your form. The numbers will come in time if you are consistent, okay? Have a great week, guys. Hope you enjoyed tonight's video. Remember, if you enjoyed this content, feel free to share it, like it, and subscribe to my channel. Max Fit Personal Training here. Coach Max out.